Good afternoon. I hope you're all doing well. I'm Nick Merger from Amarillo, Texas, and today I want to share with you two disparate literacy environments by contrasting Australia and Afghanistan. Considering the problematic terrain that hid Osama bin Laden for so long, Afghanistan has been a popular destination for would-be conquerors. First by the Soviets in 1979, and then by the Taliban in 1996. During both times, education was limited, but the Taliban rule essentially destroyed any educational foundation that existed in Afghanistan. Following the bombings of September 11th, the U.S. led counterstrikes attempting to destroy the Taliban. Other nations and the UN helped install a weak government that was wholly ineffective. In 2009, President Obama led a new approach, invading the country with U.S. troops. The mission has mixed reviews, which we are not here to debate. The fact is that aside from some intermittent peace treaties, Afghanistan has been labored by war for nearly half a century, creating some of the lowest literacy rates in the world. Women have been especially affected by Taliban control, whose religious beliefs restricted them from basic human rights. With all that said, it was amazing to see how countries have funded literacy programs in Afghanistan. From all appearances, these efforts have brought slow progress to a country dreadfully in need of peace. As for Australia, not much needs to be said. They are a longtime ally of the U.S., whose literacy gurus received national recognition for their efforts. Over the following slides, I will provide you with the literate environments of Australia and Afghanistan and evaluate and analyze the current and future challenges to literacy learning in each country. I want to begin with contrasting literacy rates for the two countries. Please notice the top values on each y-axis. Australia's total literacy rate is nearly 100% for those 15 years and older. In Afghanistan, the males are near the top, but their top value is only 60%. As I said before, it was nearly impossible to go to school during war. The exception was for males and rich parents. Children with educated parents learned at home, and some males were educated in mosques using the Quran. When I first read this, it struck me how ineffective this is. I do know that the Jewish religion utilized the same ideas, basing academic instruction off the Torah. However, the results are obvious, and the discrepancy between males and females is appalling. These numbers are from 2012 and were consistent with UNESCO and the CIA factbook, most likely because the numbers came from the same source. Both resources said the actual numbers are likely lower than the indicated amount. Prior to explaining how much of the world has united to help raise literacy rates in Afghanistan, you need to understand the complexity of languages in that area. The colored areas here are of Afghanistan, and each color represents the primary language spoken in the area. The largest two portions, the orange and the salmon colors, make up Pashto and the Persian dialect Dari. People in the northern and central areas of the country usually speak Dari, while those living in the south and east speak Pashto. Afghans in the western region of Afghanistan speak both Dari and Pashto. Most are fluent in both languages. The remaining languages are small indigenous languages. Just as the U.S. was inhabited by Native Americans, Australia was inhabited by Aborigines when Europe made contact with the island. It is estimated that between 350 and 750 indigenous languages existed at that time. Each colored region here in the map is an Aborigine tribe with an individual language. I will say that it is the best guess of original separation of the tribes prior to Europe's inhabitation. You will see from the next slide that although there is still indigenous languages, 77% of the people speak English, which is used in every facet from education to business. These pie graphs give a decent representation of the languages in both countries. The graph on the left is Afghanistan, and you can see that half of the country speaks Dari, 35% Pashto, and the other 15% make up the Turkish languages, which are several different types, and the rest is some just minor languages. Although you will notice many more slivers in the picture on the right or on the left. Remember, the Australian languages started with around 700 languages originally. The big difference is that nearly 8 out of 10 Australians speak English, a language that connects the people to the people around the world. Another difference is that Afghanistan, like Canada, has two official languages. This has created enormous problems that I'll speak about shortly. There is a distinct difference in these two countries that has created tension for nearly a century. Australia has one lingua franca, English. Afghanistan, like Canada, has two official languages, Pashto and Dari. Prior to 1933, the Persian language, now known as Dari, was a symbol of cultural upbringing. From 1933 to 1973, Zahir Shah organized language planning activities that facilitated the usage of Pashto to the public sector. These activities concerned both status planning and corpus planning. After that, all state officials and civil servants have been required to learn Persian and Pashto. For a certain period of time, salary bonuses were paid based on the knowledges of Pashto, and sometimes Pashto-speaking people were favored for official positions. In 1936, Zahir Shah declared Pashto an official language together with Persian. This status was fixed for both languages in the Constitution of 1964, with Dari for the first time being used as the official name of the Persian language of Afghanistan. Today, the cultural battle still exists over what language should be used for universities and official documents. The next few slides discuss what I've been able to gather as far as the usage of the two in media, government, and schools. The intended Dari-Pashto bilingualism of state officials and civil servants has never become a mass phenomenon among Dari speakers. Dari-Pashto bilingualism is a common phenomenon in regions with a mixed population with Pashto as the local lingua franca, but it is seldom a result of successful language planning activities. Usually, speakers with Pashto as their first language have a better command of Dari as their second language than vice versa. Even many Dari speakers who have learned Pashto at school for almost 10 years remain only passive speakers of Pashto. The imbalance can be partially explained by the fact that from the point of view of learning psychology, it is at least a beginner level, often easier to proceed from a more synthetic language, such as Pashto, to a more analytical language, such as Dari, than vice versa. At the same time, the way Pashto was taught and the content of the Pashto courses hardly met the requirements of achieving active language skills. This remains the case today. In some cases, cultural reservations can also form a psychological obstacle to the learning of Pashto. As a result, in many ministries of other public authorities, correspondence and accounting are held mostly or exclusively in Dari. For example, it is reported that in the Foreign Office, 95% of all letters are written in Dari, and that even Pashto executives write their letters according to the Dari drafts because there are no professional secretaries in the ministry who would be able to prepare a letter in Pashto. Even in the province of Nangarhar, where the majority of the population is Pashtun, official correspondence is still undertaken in Dari. Regarding media, the first television broadcast in Afghanistan took place in 1978. There were at least 10 television stations, with the main central station in Kabul being operated by the government. In 2004, there were at least 40 radio broadcast stations, approximately equal numbers of AM and FM, with programming available in Pashto, Afghan Persian, Dari, Urdu, and English. In 2003, there were an estimated 114 radios and 14 television sets for every 1,000 people. On 12 September 2004, the first independent radio station established entirely by private sector funds was inaugurated in the Ghazni province. In 2004, there were approximately 300 publications in the country. Mazar-Sharif alone had an estimated 50 publications, major newspapers all headquartered in Kabul, with estimated nearly 2,000 circulations, are Anis, 25,000, published in Dari and Pashto, Huid, 12,200, and New Kabul Times, 5,000. In English, in January 2002, the independent newspaper Kabul Weekly began publishing again, after having disappeared during the period when Taliban was in power. The first issue carried news in Dari, Pashto, English, and French. It was difficult to gauge what languages are prominent or used in Afghanistan. in universities. I looked at Kabul University and Herat University, which are in two different provinces, and they're two different primary languages if you go by the primary language map. I tried to email people from those universities, but I never got an answer. And all my research really didn't tell me anything definitively. I can say that there are language and literacy courses in both languages offered, and there was one site that indicated at Kabul teaching takes place in Dari. So from that we could assume two things. First, all universities use Dari, or we could assume that universities use the primary language in the area. I'm not sure. I did want to share with you a story from a student named Mustafa Siddiqui, whose story was shared in Olamar's thesis in 2010. It says that he attended Kabul University when the Taliban was in power. He had a serious issue with the teacher who was sent by the regime. Siddiqui tells of how the teacher refused to teach in Persian Dari and cursed at the students when they made the request. His contempt for the teacher is clearly expressed, as Siddiqui referred to the latter as a turbaned, inexperienced, and inept teacher. I can't call him a teacher. He was really non-professional. For primary education, there was one website that I saw that indicated that the first 3 years of school, students were taught in their primary language. This doesn't really make sense to me, because that would mean that they would have two separate teachers for or more for each grade level. So I don't think that's right. What I did find from a little better source is it said that currently the Ministry of Education's curriculum and Constitution's language policy calls for language segregated schools like those of earlier governments in areas where one group is prevalent. Even within the government workplace, though, language groups generate linguistic tension by discriminatory practices. Alamyar notes that some Farsi Dari, or simply Dari and Pashto speakers, in different governmental and NGOs discriminate against each other based on the languages they speak. Now, what I would say is that in these areas, we would see school administration and teachers feel that discrimination based on the languages that they primarily speak. If there's one thing I've learned in ESL education, it is the importance of learning the second language using the primary language. These fights over language have only impeded Afghanistan's educational system. After the official fall of the Taliban in 2001, the world somewhat united to help Afghanistan's people. This was certainly a humanitarian effort, but there are peace implications as well. Without an effective government, there can never be peace. This requires people to get educated and vote. This requires a policing group to abide by laws, enforce laws, and have the ability to negotiate difficult situations. For freedom, Afghani people need to be literate, and help came from all over the world. Now, because of the language problems that exist in Afghanistan, everyone recognizes that something that might be able to unite the people and the people of Afghanistan with those around the world is the use of the English language. Because of that, the U.S. Embassy in Kabul does what they can to promote the use of English in Afghanistan. The U.S. Embassy Kabul supports English programs to make the study of English more accessible to students and to teachers. With support from the State Department's Office of English Language Programs, U.S. Embassy Kabul supports a host of programs from across the country. U.S. Embassy Kabul has an English language office and a staff that works with Afghan and international partners to implement capacity building projects and grants. These initiatives develop English teaching at Afghan universities and teacher training colleges in cooperation with the Ministry of Higher Education and Ministry of Education. The ELO provides additional support for the English Language Teaching Association for Afghans to organize and participate in teacher training conferences and workshops, to conduct needs analysis, and to offer professional guidance where needed to government officials in matters of national higher education policy for English teaching in Afghanistan. One program they have is the English Access Micro Scholarship Program. The English Access Micro Scholarship Program provides a foundation of English language skills to non-elite 14 through 18-year-old students through after-class classes and intensive summer learning activities. The next one is the English Language Specialist Program. Similar to fellows, English language specialists are U.S. academics and professionals in the fields of TESOL. They serve and deliver training workshops that last between 2 weeks to 4 months. Typical assignments may include teacher training, curriculums and textbooks, development of host institution program evaluations, and in some cases, digital video conferences or webinars are used to deliver trainings and consultation. Afghan has several EL specialists conduct short-term training for students from 6 Kabul-based provincial universities. The eTeacher Scholarship Program offers English teaching professionals in Afghanistan and other countries outside the U.S. the opportunity to take 7 innovative online graduate level classes through the University of Maryland, Baltimore College. Their eTeacher courses include building teaching skills through the web, critical thinking in the EFL curriculum, English and specific purposes, methods courses, and English language, and teaching English to young learners. Now, obviously, UNESCO is a huge part in the literacy development and funding of programs in Afghanistan. This is a quote that came out of the UNESCO document that discusses the Literacy Initiative for Empowerment, which is a program that exists in several countries that are similar to Afghanistan's issues. The quote says this: "Literacy is a prerequisite for peace because it carries multiple benefits, cutting across the human culture, social, political, and economic spheres." This is from Irina Bokova, the Director General of UNESCO, on the occasion of International Literacy Day. And I think it really speaks to the problems of Afghanistan and the need for literacy. Anyhow, let's discuss the Literacy Initiative for Empowerment. This is a global strategy led and supported by UNESCO for the National Literacy Framework. They work with the Department of Ministry of Education and develop a needs assessment report for literacy to create the National Literacy Action Plan, or a National Literacy Action Plan. One outcome was the literacy and non-formal education development in Afghanistan, or the Land Afghan. That was made possible by funding through the Japanese government. Under Land Afghan, the following materials will develop: the National Curriculum Framework for 9-month adult literacy education, 6 months of basic literacy, and 3 months post-literacy; the National Literacy Primer for basic literacy, supplementary material for post-literacy, and literacy facilitators guidelines for the basic literacy primer. All materials were compiled from scratch after the fall of the Taliban regime. Another program that came about it was from the Literacy Empowerment for Afghan Police. In preparation for the reduction of foreign troops, the Afghan National Police must participate fully in democratic policing. LEAP, which is funded by, again, the Japanese government, provides intensive literacy training to police literacy facilitators in order to enhance the delivery of literacy provided to the ANP, the Afghanistan National Police. They have 500 literacy facilitators in 19 provinces that conduct literacy training for 20,000 patrol men and patrol women. Another program that was developed through the LIFE program is the Enhancement of Literacy in Afghanistan, or ELA. This is one of the largest literacy interventions under the framework of LIFE in Afghanistan. The program aims to contribute to the achievement of the educational goals as set forth in the NESP, the National Education Service Plan, and ANS, to build a peaceful, secure, and sustainable Afghanistan through wide-scale literacy interventions. The integrated literacy instruction provided through ELA will not only enhance literacy skills, but also ensure self-sustainability, which is what we see in this picture with this man cutting hair who is taking care of himself by having job skills. It also promotes both income generating and critical thinking skills. It generates a sense of public good and empowers men and women to participate in the decision making process, something they need to encourage people to vote in their elections. In the course of 5 years from 2008 to 2013, 60% of the 600,000 beneficiaries in 18 provinces will be women, which, as you know, is a tremendous thing because women have been held back for so many years in Afghanistan. The Technical and Vocational Education and Training, the TVET program, another UNESCO program, had renewed focus on developing skills for employment for youth and those who missed out on the chance to be educated formally during the years of conflict in Afghanistan. Now, originally this was funded by Japan, but the renewed focus has come from Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden and Switzerland. What this program does is develops government capacity for policy planning, coordination, and monitoring and evaluation.
Are you between 15 and 64? Registered as a job seeker with Centrelink and not a full-time student? Then the C program can help you improve your English reading, writing and math skills to increase your confidence to study and build a better pathway to the job you want. For more information, talk to a customer service officer. Call Centrelink on 132 850 or visit industry.gov.au/C.
So largely to this point, we have really just discussed Afghanistan because there was so much more to talk about in terms of how the language influenced the business sector and schools and industry. Australia uses English for everything. Almost 80% of its people speak English, so there wasn't much to discuss. But because of Australia's stellar literacy percentages, their programs are extremely effective programs. One that I want to talk about was the Australian Literacy and Numeracy Foundation, the ALNF. Their goal is basically just to raise funds, develop and implement and sustain innovative projects for individuals, families, and communities. It started in 1994 by two individuals, Mindell and Kelly, when they were introduced to their shared passion for providing the best literacy support programs to schools. Through television coverage, Mindell's success with clients she was experiencing with clients and writing and comprehension impairment led to an avalanche of phone calls, more than 3,000 from distraught parents and community members who were wanting help with their children, their staff, and their family who were struggling to read at a really basic level. In response, Mindell and Kelly began the journey to establish a charity that could properly assist people in need of literacy support, which became the ALNF. Now, another individual joined in 2004, Eric Brace. Brace worked closely with the youth and educator sector, specializing in literacy and learning support and consulting for diverse range of students, including young people and ESL students, which is really what he became known for. Brace's research into the social construction of literacy has seen him develop and direct ALNF's award-winning refugee action support and community action support programs. Today, the ALNF raises funds to continue to develop these programs. Since the establishment of ALNF, they have won the 2006 Best Community Project Award at the Ethical Investors 6th Australian Sustainability Awards for the design and delivery of the first language reading course to Indigenous community members. In 2007, the ALNF was awarded the University of Western Sydney's Partnership Award for its Refugee Action Support Program. The following year, Mary Ruth Mindell was named as one of the 4 finalists in the Australian of the Year Awards, a local hero award. In 2010, the Refugee Award was identified by the Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission and the Refugee Council of Australia as the model of excellence. In the same year, the ANLF and the Sydney Morning Herald were awarded for the UN Media Peace Award for collaboration on the ALNF's Indigenous Literacy Appeal. In 2011, RAS was a finalist at the prestigious Mac Janet Prize for Global Citizenship. Now, I wanted to tell you all of these because, to me, what I get is how important literacy is in Australia, and these national awards that these gurus, these experts, are receiving. And to me, that just says how much Australia values literacy. Another Australian literacy program that I really liked is the Australian Literacy Educators Association. This is an independent professional association dedicated to literacy and English language learning from early childhood through all stages of school and tertiary education contexts. One of the things that I really liked was this declaration that they say took a long time to develop. What I liked was how they define literacy so vast. It says on the right corner, it says literacy is a powerful, wide-ranging life skill beyond traditional notions of talking, listening, reading, and writing. In societies such as Australia, being literate means being able to use a set of capabilities to access, record, develop, and communicate ideas, comprehend and build knowledge, respond creatively to produce works of social, cultural, aesthetic, historical, and economic importance, pose, explore, and respond to local, national, and global issues, problems, and challenges, understand and interact with bureaucracies, and maintain personal records, and enjoy spending time and sharing a wide range of entertaining texts. As society changes and the ways in which Australians work, communicate, and learn change, we need to refine these capabilities. And that's really what ALIA is all about. ALIA provides input into a range of Australian Institute in Teaching and Secondary Leadership forums and activities. From time to time, manages specific projects on behalf of the Institute. Here's a list of some things that they work with. They they promote the International Literacy Day on the 8th of September. They work on a project called My Read, which is a project that was funded by the Commonwealth Department of Education, Science and Training. It was named the winner of the Australian Awards for Excellence in Educational Publishing in 2003. My Read is based on several beliefs. All students can be successful readers. All teachers are teachers of reading. Teachers make a difference. Monitoring and assessment inform teaching and learning. Teaching needs a repertoire of flexible practices. ALIA has also been involved in organizing the literacy activity for National Literacy and Numeracy Week since 2010. One thing that it looks like that they do that I think we can relate to is they work with the Stella materials. Stella is basically the TEKS of Australia. And what they do is they help to create those Stellas, and then they create materials around to teach them. One thing that it seems like they're really proud of is that they differentiate with people using these Stellas instead of having the all everything under the sun approach that we do with the TEKS. Stella speaks to all English language and literacy teachers because the standards do not purport to measure teachers against one-size-fits-all concept of the ideal English teacher, but reflects what is characteristic of English teachers in all the contexts in which we teach. So I really think that that's a fantastic program. This last program is the Language Literacy and Numeracy program, the LLN, which provides language literacy and numeracy assistance to job seekers who, due to low levels of these skills, may experience significant disadvantages in finding and sustaining employment. This is managed by the Industry, Innovation, Science, Research, and Tertiary Education. The LLN program provides these things, the skills, that they can participate more effectively in the labor workforce, providing greater gains to the society in long term. Now, some training that they have is it all begins with a pre-training assessment, which determines the job seekers' needs, their competency levels, and places them in an appropriate stream. The first stream is initial language stream, and this is solely for learners whose first language is not English, and who at the time of the PTA achieve Australian Core Skills Framework level 1 or below for reading and communications. The second one is the basic language literacy and numeracy stream, which focuses on consolidating functional LLN skills. The last one is the advanced language and literacy and numeracy stream for learners who at the time of the PTA generally achieved a level 3 to a 5 in reading and written oral communication. The training is normally delivered face-to-face through a small proportion of training is delivered through distance learning or a mixture of both. Participants attend training on a part-time 10 to 19 hours a week or a full-time basis 20 hours a week. Learners can receive up to 8,000 hours of free training. Comparing digital literacy and the ability to utilize inquiry projects was obviously pretty different with Afghanistan and Australia. Afghanistan, as you'll see, is developing their ability to use computers and utilize broadband internet, but it's not where it needs to be. Australia obviously has the same thing as the United States, and so their ability to use digital literacy and inquiry should be great. However, what we're going to see is that they're not using digital literacy, but they have a plan to head in that direction. I found a story that I think speaks to the sexism that has taken place in Afghanistan, and also has to do with digital literacy and how important that is to Afghanistan, especially to the women in Afghanistan. So here's a story that I'm going to read you, and then we can kind of talk about this. It says, down a dusty side street and behind walls crowned with razor wire, a room full of girls huddle behind the blank screens of a dozen desktops. The power outage of frequent occurrence in Kabul in much of Afghanistan seems to faze no one. The painted outline of a computer keyboard on a blackboard serves as a reminder of the students' determination to continue their digital education, even when access to technology temporarily vanishes. Today they will not have to wait for that long for the computers to turn power up. The women'sannex.com and the Digital Citizen Fund who sponsor the class have purchased a generator. The head teacher rushes out of the room, and moments later the distant rumble of an engine and the flickering of the overhead lights set the girls in motion. Hands reach out from under robes and the computers churr to life. Excel spreadsheets and paint programs appear on the screens. The girls have been learning English language skills and basic computer literacy, including social media, Excel, and various office programs. Some girls work on blogs they will share on social media sites, and one of them writes, English and computer skills are very important to us. We learn about the Windows program and Word. We can go on to teach the other women the computer and the internet. English is an international language, so it is very important that we all know it. And the English we can go to other countries to communicate with people from other countries. Globally, Afghanistan suffers from a digital divide. Only a small percentage of the population has access to the use of information and communication technology, a factor that increasingly determines and serves as a measurement of economic success. But internally, Afghanistan suffers from this gender divide. Men and boys have greater access to education technology, and it's always been that way because of their religion. Women are prevented in most cases from driving, from being seen with men outside of their immediate families, from holding positions of authority, and in many cases from moving freely within their own communities. Women often never work outside the home. More than 50% of girls marry or become engaged by the time they're 12. And when women marry, they usually leave school forever. Too often they find themselves isolated and cut off from communicating to the outside world. I think that this quote from Ambassador Ronald D. Newman frames the digital and gender divides perfectly and tells how important it is that this changes for women, both the sexism and the digital literacies. As a country without a lot of resources, Afghanistan is going to have to develop intellectual resources, and it will be vital to bring women into the educated workforce. Now, Roya Mahbub a pioneering social entrepreneur from Herat, Afghanistan, who was a Time 100 Person of the Year in 2013, and the co-founder of the woman'sannex.com and Digital Literacy Fund, runs computer classes in girls' schools in Herat and Kabul. He says that if a woman wants to be independent, first she needs education, second she needs a skill, and then she needs to make money. Only when a woman makes her own money does she have her rights. According to Mahbub, digital literacy not only gives women and girls access to information and educational resources, it connects them to an international community and trains them in technology. The restrictions imposed on women in Afghanistan's conservative society make digital education, which they can learn and potentially access from home, school, and other safe places, a likely route to employment in an emerging economy where technology will play an increasing role. Now, what the blog went on to say at the end was really just that there are a ton of companies that have invested billions of dollars in creating this infrastructure for broadband internet. But it did talk about some obstacles to the digital literacy. According to the Afghan Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, only about 3 million people, or 10% of the country, have access to the internet. And despite the premise of this fiber optic infrastructure, about 75% of Afghans live beyond the reach of the new infrastructure in rural areas. The Taliban regularly attacks girls' schools. Many of the schools lack buildings and books. And for women and girls in Afghanistan who often live in isolation or treated as second-class citizens, access to technology and the internet can become a pathway to digital citizenship. As a woman and girls access information and educational resources available online, both the digital and gender divides will begin to close as the possibility for the future begins to open. Now, Australia is quite different because it has always had the money and the infrastructure to do this. But the problem that it says is that they have invested so much money in physical asset industry that they haven't invested into the STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Because of this, what they have seen is a decrease in the innovation, the electronic innovation that has come out of Australia. For Australia to succeed in the next few decades, there needs to be a shift in the priorities, both across Australian society and generally in government policy. It has to start at the earliest levels of education, and the perfect thing to do that is digital literacy. So currently they're not using this, but the perfect way to begin using digital literacy is as a catalyst for the promotion of their STEM programs. So taking into consideration, let's sum up the analysis and kind of predict the future for Afghanistan and Australia. Afghanistan is facing a battle with few opportunities for celebration. Unfortunately, that battle is a part of every facet of life, from sexism, poverty, bad water, lack of food, and war. The past 14 years attempted to put in place a government that could thwart evil regimes, but they are still dependent on the world for survival. Part of the problem is that half the population is not used to these religious beliefs, and these religious beliefs don't seem to be going anywhere soon. The other part is the inability to create a basic infrastructure as regimes continue to destroy their own country in a fight for who's in charge. For success, Afghanistan will have to begin encouraging women to play a larger part of society. And armies will have to learn to survive on their own so progress isn't retarded. Corporations will need to continue the investment into broadband internet for digital literacy to allow for education, empowerment, and ultimately emancipation. Australia has a great foundation with an already high literacy rate for the population as a whole. The country seems to value literacy through celebration and by esteem for literacy experts. The one problem is the need for STEM, which can be promoted easily through digital literacy in early childhood education. Australia will succeed because the people work together for the equality and national success.